Okay, all right. Uh, Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. We are releasing today a report on the practices of pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, serving Iowa Medicaid. This affects every single Iowa taxpayer, as well as thousands of Iowans who rely on Medicaid. We found that these PBMs employed by managed care organizations, those are the MCOs that are running privatized Medicaid, are using an effective rate pricing model, which allows them to do year-end reconciliations, meaning clawbacks from pharmacies. This is something that can lead directly to and is evidence of spread pricing, which is prohibited under Iowa Medicaid because it can inflate costs for taxpayers, reduce the quality of care, and create financial hardships for pharmacies. That's especially true for the independent pharmacies in smaller communities. Many of them have closed in recent years, forcing people in rural Iowa to have to drive even further to fill their prescriptions. We found that the back-end reconciliations or clawbacks performed by just one of these three PBMs in the Medicaid system average about $100 million over 3 years. That's $100 million that Iowa taxpayers may have been overcharged. We believe it to be even more than that because despite the fact that we made repeated requests and negotiated, the PBM still, at the end of the day, withheld critical financial information. That limited the scope of our review, meaning that we couldn't see everything that we needed to in order to evaluate whether or not spread pricing was happening. This lack of transparency is obviously a massive red flag. And the passage of SF 478, of course, limits the auditor's office from investigating further, making it even more difficult and complicated to look behind the curtain and have transparency and accountability for tax dollars in Iowa. We believe that Iowans deserve to know how their tax dollars are being spent, and the PBM shouldn't be allowed to rip off taxpayers by hiding behind what they say is proprietary information. We recommend the following changes. Year-end reconciliations should be banned. Auditors should be given full access to information in order to determine whether or not PBMs are following the rules. When PBMs aren't following the rules, we need to have stricter enforcement penalties. PBMs MCOs should also be required to hold PBMs they hire accountable for this, including those that they own outright, which is itself a conflict of interest. Happy to take any questions.
So the spread pricing is prohibited, but it's not always happening based on this effective rate pricing. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, the effective rate pricing is basically a way to implement spread pricing at the very end of the year. And we can tell through our work that Medicaid claims are included in these back-end reconciliations. That's part of how we know that tax dollars are implicated here. So if you think about it this way, spread pricing might normally be a situation where you are paying one pharmacy, charging one pharmacy one amount for a drug, but charging another one a very different amount. But you would be doing that at the same time. This is a system where they're able to instead do it all at the very end of the year in a place where there's much less accountability for it. And it's much harder for anyone to find out what they're doing. And at the end of the day, when they're hiding this information from us because of SF 478 or because they're calling it trade secrets, that's just wrong. You shouldn't be able to basically claim that the way you are wrongfully profiting and ripping off taxpayers is somehow proprietary information.
The state said, I think it's this spring, that they're going to bring some pharmacy functions, some drug pricing in-house from the privatized model. How is that implicated? Is it related to this audit? What would it change anything?
I know that I think the Medicaid manager said that. They proposed it. They said it would save maybe $27 million, if I remember correctly. That is a good idea. It remains to be seen whether or not that will actually happen. My understanding is there was quite a lot of pushback after that was proposed. It is a good idea.
ACRG has, how was this information uncovered?
We performed this audit through hiring an expert who has done these all over the country. They've done work in Texas, they've done work in Ohio, and they have an understanding and a capacity and a skill set that isn't held within the experts of our office. We are typically financial auditors. We audit financial statements, and the PBM world is oftentimes intentionally very, very complicated, and so you can't really do this work with a set of ordinary financial auditors. So we hired 3 Access advisors to assist us with this.
And how long, like what prompted the audit and how long has it been going on?
The numbers that we reviewed were from 2019 to 2021. So that's the time frame for the transactions. The audit began after that point, but it took absolutely forever to get all of this data, to go back and forth with PBMs, to evaluate legal claims about trade secrets or about SF 478. And so, as usual with this industry, everything is much murkier and slower moving than any reasonable person would expect.
And Iowa passed a law maybe a year ago that had a number of regulations for PBMs.
Mhm.
And I think that law is maybe entirely or at least partially held up in court right now. What, compared to what we looked at, would the law, if it were allowed to go into effect, address those things, or is it helping in any way?
Look, that was a bipartisan law, and it's very good. I think there's a lot more that can be done. The regulations that were contained in it would prevent some abuses, but again, I think it's very important to emphasize that auditors need to have access to this information to make sure that taxpayers are being protected and they're not being ripped off.
Can you clarify what prompted this investigation? Is this a standard audit? What did it cost to hire those specialty auditors?
The payments to the firm, I think, totaled about $30,000, which if you're looking at 100 million over the course of a year for one of the 3 PBMs, that's a small investment to make to get a lot of transparency and understanding in terms of what exactly is going on, or at least to ask for it and demand it. This work was prompted by the fact that similar states with similar setups have seen problematic pricing and losses in the tune of over $100 million, for example, in Ohio. So there's huge amounts of money involved here at the end of the day for taxpayers.
So what comes next? Any repercussions for the PBMs?
We investigate and we report where this report, as any report goes after this, is up to others who are involved in making sure that we have a transparency and oversight of tax dollars in Iowa. Thanks, everybody. Oh, you got one?
Are there examples in other states of where they've done something about similar situations like this?
You know, so the audits in Texas, Ohio, and West Virginia are ones that we reference in our report. They all found tremendously alarming examples of taxpayers getting ripped off. There's been reforms passed in a few states. I want to add Arkansas to that list. And obviously we passed reforms here in Iowa. It was a bipartisan bill. It was a good bill overall. But I think a lot of this comes down to, at the end of the day, we're still not getting the transparency that we would need to be reassured that taxpayers aren't getting ripped off. And we can tell at the very end of the year from the very limited data that we did get that there's still taxpayer funded prescriptions involved in these clawbacks at the end of the year, which is hard to escape any conclusion other than this is the prohibited practice of spread pricing. Could it be something else? We don't have the data to determine that because they wouldn't give it to us.